Okay, we're continuing on. Number 16. Diagram a randomized block experiment comparing the effectiveness of 3 kinds of flea collars if you have an experimental group consisting of 18 cats and 18 dogs. So here we are, 3 kinds of collars used on dogs and cats. Diagram a randomized block experiment. So in a randomized block experiment, you block subjects into groups of similar characteristics. So here we'll block into the groups of dogs and the cats. And then we'll compare treatments, collars, on each block. So over the cats, we'll take the 18 cats, we'll divide them into 3 groups randomly. 6 cats, 6 cats, 6 cats. And these 6 cats will get collar 1, those 6 collar 2, those cats collar 3. And then we'll compare the fleas, how many fleas they have in some way, to see the effectiveness of the flea collar. Do the same thing with the dogs. Take the 18 dogs, randomly assign them into 3 groups of 6 each. Give them the 3 brands of collars and compare the effectiveness of those flea collars by maybe counting fleas. And then at the end of the day, we'll compare what happened in the 2 groups to see whether one brand of collar is just universally better, or maybe for cats one kind of collar works well and for dogs another kind of collar works well. So that's a randomized block experiment. In 17, we have, recall the wording of survey questions can be causes of bias. Explain the directions of bias you'd expect to find using these prompts in these survey questions. First question is, speeding is responsible for 60% of all accidents. How much do you drive over the speed limit? B says, 8 hours of sleep has shown to be essential for good health. How long do you sleep each night? We would anticipate for A, if speeding is dangerous, and we ask you how much you drive over the speed limit, you're going to underestimate how much you actually drive over the speed limit. If you usually drive 10 over, maybe you say 8 over. So I would imagine the answers would be lower than the truth. For B, since it says it's essential to sleep 8 hours for good health, then your answer is probably going to be closer to 8 than is actually true. So if you tend to sleep 4 hours a night, maybe you'd say 6. If you tend to sleep 12 hours a night, maybe you would say 10, just to bring it in closer to 8. Number 18. 18 says, a couple plans to have 3 children. There are 8 possible arrangements of girls and boys. Write down the sample space and let X be the number of girls. What's the probability X is 2? So here's the 3-child family. In terms of all the patterns of boys and girls you might have, there's 8 different patterns of boys and girls. All boys, 2 boys, and 1 girl happens 3 ways. 2 girls, 1 boy happens 3 ways. 3 girls happens 1 way. That's the sample space, and we imagine that those patterns are equally likely. If the chance of boy and girl is about 50%, then those would all be equally likely. So with 8 equally likely outcome, the probability of 1 boy and 2 girls, 1 boy and 2 girls corresponds to these 3. Each of them, since it's 8 equally likely outcomes, has chance 1/8. And so if there's 3 ways it can happen, then that's 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 for the probability to give you 3/8. Another way to think about it is anytime you have equally likely outcomes and you have an event, the probability of the event is the number of outcomes in the event divided by the number of outcomes in the sample space. So that'd be 3 divided by 8. So that takes care of up through problem 18 on the practice test. And I'll see you in a while with a new slide.